helicopter crash in the Adansi Ekrofom district, claiming 8 precious lives, including 2 government ministers. Now, while that was, I'm saying that to transition into a roundtable discussion. It's time for that. Now, while that was a military context, it reminds us all that from factories to offices, from construction sites to corporate boardrooms, that safety is not optional. It's life and death. And if we are honest, too many organizations think of safety protocols as paperwork for compliance, not as an active shield protecting people's lives. But what if every business adopted a culture where safety was as important as profits? What if hazard prevention was a routine as a morning coffee? Joining me to break this down is an experienced HR practitioner and occupational health and safety expert, Na Amele Kofi, and she's here to help us understand how to actively identify hazards, enforce standards, and also ensure the well-being of employees and stakeholders in every workplace. Na Amele, good morning. You're welcome to the Business Breakfast on Z.
Good morning.
Good to have you this morning.
Good morning. I'm well, thank you.
All right.
I hope you are.
Yeah, I'm well too, by God's grace. All right, so very important conversation this morning. First of all, how important is this conversation to you? Hello? Hello?
Yes.
Sorry, I don't know if you were speaking, but I can't hear you. I couldn't hear you.
Apologies for that.
Yes, I'm asking that, first of all, how important this conversation about safety to you?
For me, it's quite important. For most people who worked with me, they know I'm always going on about safety, about how the office should be safe and all of that. Yes. So, for me, health and safety cuts across issues like security, like how buildings are set up, how factory floors are set up, and the policies governing the entire company. Because safety is not just in the physical, right? It's other stuff that we do that also will eventually impact on the safety of an organization. So I remember in the intro you spoke about the unfortunate plane crash, and for me, as soon as I heard it, I was extremely stressed out because, in corporate governance, you do not put more than one person of a certain ranking on a flight. You will not typically do that for organizations. You will not put their 2 high-ranking executives on the same flight. And it's been a great source of distress for me.
I see. But do you think that is something we're not paying attention to? Because I know that what you just said is not new. And there's been times where I've raised concerns about certain even functions that we attend in this country, where you see all kinds of
those are the scariest ones.
Say again?
Those are the scariest ones.
Yeah,
you're sitting behind your TV and you are at the edge of the seat till the function is over.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering that what if something happens? We're going to lose all these people. I don't know whether I think too much.
Well, usually there are mitigations, right? So for every risk, right, typically for every risk, there's some sort of mitigation, even though there are accidents that you cannot mitigate, right? So usually in situations like you've just described, where there are events where all these high-ranking officials have to be present, there are health and safety experts and security experts who have already set up a mitigation plan, right? If there's any kind of disaster, how to exit them, plan exit routes, they've planned how to cover them. It's a very specific area of health and safety. Yes. So it's not something you can insure, but the insurance doesn't cover it because it's active is an active mitigation strategy. You
Yeah.
understand?
Yeah.
So,
I see. All right. We'll still talk about the state of safety in Ghana very soon. But tell me, there are some businesses that think safety is only for big companies. Why should every business, regardless of the size or maybe industry, take safety seriously?
okay, so there are different reasons. One is the legal basis, right? So in Ghana, we have the Factories, Shops, and Offices Act. Most people think it only applies to factories. It actually applies to every single business, because if you don't have a factory floor, you have a shop front. If you don't have a shop front, you have an office, isn't it? So it applies to all of us, and it's very specific in how buildings are designed, how the facilities they are providing, the kind of fire safety systems that have to be in place, the notifications that have to be in place. However, a lot of businesses are not adhering to them. So that's the legal part, right? And for the business itself, they stand quite a lot of risks. If you lost your employees, right, there's the productivity risk, there's the reputational risk, right? There's the risk of having to use a lot of the business funds for compensation. Okay, so there are all these risks that I think that for every business, they should be concerned about occupational health and safety. Okay, so sometimes you walk into a shop and you see how they've stacked, let's say, boxes, right? And you ask for something, and the shop attendant is climbing things without any thought of a risk, right? That, okay, these boxes could fall over and fall on me. I could pull the wrong thing. I could fall off the ladder, all those things.
Yeah.
And I actually don't know how much training they are giving these people in lifting and all of that. So there are all those risks.
So it's very important for every business to pay attention to their safety.
I mean, if you remember recently, Kantamanto got burned,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it was due to the safety precautions not being taken.
True.
Right, in terms of wiring, in terms of how flammable material have been packed. So, clothing is naturally flammable, wood is naturally flammable, the least pack, right?
Yeah.
But there's no consideration, and these things, when they happen, they affect lots and lots of Ghanaians' livelihood. So I think it's in our interest, right, to be concerned about how the safety precautions are being taken, how people are being considered when buildings are designed, right? And sometimes businesses just change the purpose of a building without actively going through the whole risk assessment process. And that also has its own risks.
Right. I mean, back to the helicopter issue. Now, of course, the nation is still reeling from that recent crash. Now, even though it was military, what lessons can businesses learn from it? Hello?
Yes. So it's still very difficult for me to talk about this, but for businesses, as I said initially, one, the risk of putting a lot of your high-ranking executives in either the same vehicle, if they are traveling to the same place, using the same route, using the same flight, right? So that is one risk. The other risk will be, do you even have a fallback? Okay, because some businesses don't have things like keyman insurance. They don't have immediate takeover plans, right? Where we have disaster recovery plans, okay, business continuity plans, and that is a whole issue on its own, because when you are planning for occupational health and safety, it is part of a wider business continuity plan, because the idea is that every business should be sustainable. Okay, whether you are running a factory, a shop, or an office. Running a sustainable business, because remember, the stakeholders are not just you. The stakeholders are the public, the government, everybody who's purchased, your clients, suppliers. Their interest is in your business being alive. Okay, so all those considerations have to be taken care of. In fact, that is why for certain sizes of business, the insurance laws require that you have public liability insurance, right? Because if you have a business where people come in and out, right, anybody could fall, something could fall on somebody, anything could happen. You understand? And all those are risks that businesses have to bear. So the that's why I said you can only mitigate so far.
Right.
And in your mitigation, you have to put in the right policies for your business. You can't take somebody's health and safety policies and apply them across board. It doesn't work.
Okay.
Right. Because businesses are so different. Unless you have maybe 10 of the same entity, right? Like a franchise, let's say like a KFC franchise, right? You typically have very similar health and safety rules or procedures for all their shops. But even that, in different countries, because of how that country's rules, they will adapt them differently.
Okay.
So
I see.
yeah.
Right. Okay. Let's move on. Let's talk about the state of safety in Ghana. Now, you've worked with various organizations across sectors. From your observation, how would you describe Ghana's current workplace safety culture?
Okay. So what I've observed, right? This is my observation, and I mean, I'm not saying it's cast in stone. Is that for now, a lot of factories, right? Because of the factories, the inspectorate spends a lot of time visiting the factories, and they know they might be shut down. And also for food vendors, the FDA is quite strict about how they are set up and how their workers are licensed and tested and all those things. Okay, so there are some of the sectors that are regulated, right? So for those ones, now workplace accidents are minimized, okay, because they've practically implemented almost all the rules, and they are working against specific standards, okay. However, for where I see a lot of risk that I'm not sure if anyone is actually actively regulating is shops, big shops, supermarkets, businesses, because sometimes you walk into a shop and everything is haphazard, right? And you could get hurt, the workers could get hurt, the place could go up in flames, and nobody's really, most people are just concerned with selling and making money. Right? So that is also an issue. In some offices, generally in Ghana, offices are well structured, right?
Yeah.
But you go into some offices and people are packed so tight that you realize immediately all the potential accidents that could happen in how they are seated, in how cars are parked, in how the facilities, whether the facilities in the building, like kitchen facilities, washroom facilities, are they even adequate for the number of people in that building? Okay, so there are all those considerations that contribute to the state of safety. And one of the things that a lot of people are not cognizant of is the possibility of having what we call a sick building, right? So where so the rules, the health and safety rules say you have to clean the buildings a particular way. You have to make sure that you are preventing sickness, right?
Yeah.
If you don't follow those standards, you are not servicing, let's say, your air conditioners on a quarterly basis, you're not weekly doing a deep clean in your building, the likelihood that if a sickness broke out of any kind, it can literally run havoc across your employees is also there. And you will have buildings where people, let's say, whole departments fall sick, or this person falls sick. As they are getting better, this person falls sick, they get reinfected. You know, there's all of that can happen, and that totally reduces productivity.
Right.
And a loss of productivity is not good for any economy. Okay, so you have a lot of sick days, you have a lot of absent days, right? That's a big problem.
What do you think is actually driving the negligence in some of the sectors you've mentioned? Is it because of...
Is it Is it negligence? I
Well,
wouldn't say I wouldn't say it's willful negligence, right?
okay.
I would say for some of them it's a lack of knowledge. For some of them it's a lack of regulation
Mm,
because nobody has come to crack the whip, right? But for often for factories and offices, because the inspectorate does visit them often,
mm,
they get penalties and all of that. So nobody wants to pay those kind of hefty penalties, right? So
mm,
they will. But for for markets, for instance, I'm not sure who's checking. Okay, when I was a kid way back, we used to have the health and safety inspectors from the metropolitan assemblies.
mm,
I'm not sure. I know they're still training them, but I'm not sure they have enough to go around, right? Because it's not a profession a lot of people are opting into. Okay, so they are doing the work, but how much of it are they able to do, right? And there are some who actually actively go around even residential areas to check on how people are maintaining their buildings and all of that. And I don't know if the markets are just overwhelming for them,
mm.
possibly, right? So you can give the order, but will the market woman understand and even adhere to it? Unless you lock their shops up, and that also then creates a loss of livelihood. You
Yeah,
understand?
yeah.
So it's balancing the rules versus versus the productivity issue I was talking about.
Mm.
It's not an easy balance to achieve.
Achieve.
So
Mm. But of course, not all industries are at the same level. Which sectors in Ghana do you think are leading in safety practices, or I mean, and which ones are falling behind?
so definitely manufacturing, especially food manufacturing, is leading, right? Because they their regulation is such that um, if something goes wrong,
Mm.
right, you have a loss of revenue on your hands. So if you recall, in the past couple of weeks, one of the food companies has had to recall a product. And that immediately in the mind of Ghanaians will say, oh, this product won't buy it again. And
Yeah.
once there's so many alternatives, right, you lose revenue immediately, the items you've recalled. And then also going forward, you have to now do a lot of business development for the public to want to purchase that product
Mm.
again. Okay. So usually in the food industry, they are much more um, cautious.
So
So I've
cautious, right?
realized food industry, plastics industry, right?
Mm. Okay.
And the generally manufacturing is in the lead.
Right.
Generally
And which
manufacturing.
ones are falling behind? Okay, I think you already mentioned the shops, right?
Yes. Oh, they are way behind. As for
Mm.
them, it will take a lot of work to bring them to
But
the same standard as the
right,
factories.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. But
Mm.
don't you think there's also a factor of the fact? I mean, how do I even put this? There's also the element of the fact that I mean, God protects us, and nothing will go wrong. In terms of some of these things, don't you think that also plays a role in there?
Yeah. So I'll say that the average Ghanaian um relies a lot on the providence of God, right?
Mm,
Like you were saying. But the Bible also tells us that we were brought on earth to tend the earth,
mm,
right? Which means we have to be responsible, we have to be diligent,
right.
okay, in doing that. So whatever you are working on, whether it's a business, it's a factory, it's in an office, you have to be diligent in keeping it such that it will grow, it will scale, right?
Mm,
But if you limit yourself by putting it in a condition where all of it can go up in flames, that is a problem.
mm, right.
Okay,
Right.
that is a problem.
Mm. Yeah, so we need to be careful. All right, still on the state of safety in Ghana. Now, I'm sure you've seen patterns in your work. Are there some common mistakes you've noticed across Ghanaian workplaces?
Um, Let me think through.
Sure.
Yeah. Patterns. I'll say people get used to buildings and sometimes they disregard the rules. I mean, even no accident has happened in 2 3 years, right? There
Mm,
are lots. So nothing will happen. Okay, so they overlook some of the rules. That is mainly the challenge. I mean, but they forget that it's because it's been regulated and everybody has been keeping to the rules. That's why nothing has happened. Because typically, to make sure that um, the people in a building are keeping to the rules, you have to keep reminding them, you have to keep training them. Okay, it's not something that happens overnight. You know, as human beings, we are beset by a lot of things. So um, it's easy to overlook the ones that we think, oh, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, even though those are the simple things that might trip you. So, for instance, um, let's say something is plugged into a wall, right? And at the end of the day, ideally, all the things should be taken out,
All right.
right? Just so that if there was an electrical fault, the whole place doesn't go up. But because nothing has happened, people just go home and leave them plugged in because nothing has happened.
True.
You understand? So the day that something actually happens,
All right.
yes.
Right. It's a very important thing we need to pay attention to. But some people say that we only act after something goes wrong in this country. Do you think
Fortunately,
is that the case?
we are more reactive than proactive of most of the time,
Why do you
and
say
that's
that?
a challenge. Yes, ideally, we should be proactive, much more proactive about health and safety.
And why do you think we are more reactive?
That's what I'm saying. Is the belief that nothing will happen. It's I don't know how to explain. It's a deep seated. Um, I don't know if it's fake or it's naivety. I'm not sure exactly.
What exactly? Right. Okay.
Mm,
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. All right. So let's talk about identifying the hazards briefly. But just before that, if you just tuned in, please, this is Business Breakfast on Z101.9 FM with me, Nitra Bihamon. This morning we're having a conversation with Na Amele Krofi. She's an HR practitioner and an occupational health and safety expert, and we're talking about how to we're talking about prioritizing workshop safety to prevent disasters, and that is something that I believe it's very important to talk about. If you just join a conversation, I'd love to hear from you. Please send us a WhatsApp on 0544321019, 0544321019. You can as well call me on 030395661, 030395661, and then we'll give you the opportunity to share your thoughts with us this morning. We're streaming live on Facebook at ZFMGH and also on YouTube at Z Multimedia. Visit these platforms, drop a comment, and I will read them for you. All right, now let's continue the conversation. Now, hazards aren't always obvious to the untrained eye. How can organizations spot hidden dangers before they cause harm?
okay, so remember, I spoke to you about risk assessments.
Yeah.
Okay, so for every organization, the best practice is to look at your whole process workflow, right? And identify the potential risks. And every time you are adding on a new procedure, you do the assessment, right? The ideal is to have internal auditors who are doing those assessments, but you don't always, most people can't afford them, right?
Yeah.
It means that you must, as a matter of course, have someone in the organization who is doing this risk assessment. Okay, because what happens is that even though you can't identify all the risks, if you are taking a proactive measure to assess the risks, right,
Yeah.
it will enable you identify most of the hazards. Okay, most of the hazards and be able to address them.
Right.
Okay, so let me give you an example. You are in the studio at the moment,
Yeah.
right? Ideally, I don't know how your set up, but ideally your studio should have 2 exits. Okay, because you have a lot of technical equipment, etc. If for any reason your console caught fire, right?
Yeah.
How would you get out?
The Ghanaian in me was about to say God forbid, but go ahead.
But I'm assuming that the person who sets up the studio
Yeah.
will have identified that risk. So what they will have in the walls is you will have some sort of fireproof material. Your ceiling will likely have fire sensors, right?
Yeah.
They will have designed an escape route already. So
Yeah.
I see you looking around.
Yeah. Yeah, I need to make sure
I
that
can
I'm
see you
safe.
trying
Right.
to see that the hazards I'm talking about, are
Yeah.
they there
I
or
need
there?
it. All
I
right.
mean, ideally, that is what we should be
We should be
doing.
doing. Right. But how often should risk assessments be carried out, and who should take the lead?
Okay, so if you can um have at least twice a year, right? Twice a year, and typically you will have either an admin or compliance officer if you are an office. If
Okay.
you're a factory, you will have a health and safety officer. And in some organizations, depending on how big the organization is, they actually have all the way to um, health and safety directors.
Yeah.
And typically, they are responsible for managing occupational health and safety, production health and safety, security, and the environment. Okay,
Okay.
all the things that could typically act together to bring the organization down.
Okay. Right. Right. Now, but from your experience, I know like again, you've done stuff with several industries. What are the most overlooked hazards in offices, factories, and even construction sites? Maybe you can highlight a few
Each of them have their own issues.
issues.
So
Okay.
let's
Then
say for
one after
construction
the other.
sites,
Right.
right?
Sure.
What I've often seen is that, so for instance, the materials, okay, and when they're working and they have a deadline, most of the time that they're focused on just, let's say I'm building this house. The focus is bring it in. As their laborers bringing it in, the masons, etc., carpenters, etc., are executing.
Yeah.
And sometimes in that building, you have multiple teams working at the same time. And there, it is very easy to overlook how one team impacts the other.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for instance, carpenters are working overhead and masons are working on walls. Okay. The possibility that the carpenters might drop something and it will hit those below.
Right.
Okay. That is something
I think I see that a lot.
So usually on construction sites these days, you are required to have a health and safety officer who is checking, do people have their hard hats on? Do they have their safety boots on? If they are climbing up, do they have harnesses? Okay, but you don't always have that on every site. That is where the issues arise, because even on the most health and safety compliant sites, you might have issues.
But which entity is even in charge of, I mean, assets where checking how they are complying and all of that?
This falls under the Ministry of Labor, Employment and Labor, and they have a factories inspectorate and they have a labor department. And within these organizations, they have inspectors who actually go around. That's why I was saying there are not enough inspectors. It's not that they are not doing their work. They don't have enough resources.
I see.
So their focus generally is on where the biggest risks are.
Okay. Right. Okay. Right. So
you talked about the most damage will be done.
Sure. I get it. So you talked about construction sites. How about the factories and the offices?
Okay. So in factories, so let me give you a typical Ghanaian soup manufacturing factory, right? There's the risk of heat. There's the risk of the product which has melted pouring on somebody, right?
Yeah.
There's the risk of people slipping.
True.
Okay. So usually on such a factory floor, you have people, dedicated cleaners who are constantly clearing. Okay, so that the risk of slippage is reduced. You have people who are monitoring how the product is being completed. Okay, you have people who are removing hazardous waste. Okay, so when all those risks are being addressed, and you have good ventilation, for instance, so that there's extractors, etc., so the heat is not even staying long enough to build up. Okay, you reduce the risk of accidents happening. Okay. And typically, before people are allowed to work on the machines, you'll have been trained on how to use the machines.
Right.
So, for instance, if you are doing bars of soap, there's a soap slicer. Okay. You don't want the person who is standing behind to mistakenly try to pick something and the machine slices their hand
Slices.
off.
Yeah.
You see.
Mm.
So there are all those risks. And for instance, if you have a warehouse, right, you have loaders and you have the people who are driving the forklifts. Okay. And usually when the forklift is going to move, it sounds an alarm, people reposition themselves. Okay. And you'll see that when you go into well-structured warehouses, they actually have demarcations for where items should be placed, for where the forklift will pass, where for passageways for people to pass. Because if people do not pass on the right passageways and they try to take shortcuts, then they are going to disrupt someone else's work, and there's more likelihood of an accident.
Okay.
Okay.
Right. Right. But a question on my mind right now is that with so many possible risks, how do you determine which one to tackle first?
Okay. So in operationalizing workplace safety, right, we have what we call prioritization.
Okay.
So when you have your bundle or bucket of risks, you now look at which risks are the most likely or what most probable, right? And if they did happen, what is their impact? So that is how you do the prioritization. Okay. So then you address them one after the other. Okay, based on impact, based on probability. So in the end, we have so those are, if you like, what we call inherent risks, right? So once you bring in the mitigations or the controls, you will end up with residual risks. And the targets for most organizations is to have residual risk ratings of 0. Okay, where after the mitigations, after the controls are put in place, you basically have minimal risks.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk about law for a moment. What are the key legal obligations for workplace safety here in Ghana?
Okay, so the main, as I said earlier, the main regulations or laws that govern this, there's the Fire Act, there's the Labor Act, which has its own provision, and there's the Factories, Shops, and Offices Act, right? So the Labor Act and the Fire have also put in some modifications into the Factories and Shops Act, but there are rules around one, registration, two, around setup. There are regulations around, for instance, so let me give you a very specific one. For instance, for factories and offices, they're actually a measurement of cubic meters of how to position people, how to position things, the gaps that should be between equipment and people, the gaps, the hallways, there are specific measurements. I don't know whether everybody is following them, right? But the law actually prescribes all the way down to, that's how specific the law is. So.
I see. As we still go, I mean, even as the law is still in place, I mean, we still have laws in place. Accidents still do happen.
Yes.
Where do businesses most often fail in meeting these obligations?
When you say where, I'm trying to understand you, clarify your question.
Yeah, in terms
there
of
are different areas, as I've just mentioned.
So in which of these areas you mentioned do businesses mostly fail?
Some businesses might have all the policies, right? And where sometimes they fail is in training, right? Because they're expecting that people have common sense. when you put the signs up and you put the tables a particular way, people won't come and change the arrangements, right? But if you haven't trained the people, you haven't explained to them that if you moved this out of place, this is what is likely to happen, right? So let me give you an example. In the aviation industry, right? They used to say suitcases can be up to 32 kilos, right? Then they realized that they were having a lot of back issues among their workers, right? So they started dropping, and now most airlines will not allow you to have suitcases of more than maximum 25 kilos.
Oh, I see.
because they were spending so much money in rehabilitation costs. And
Mm,
once people have back issues, it affects their entire bodies,
true.
right? And there's a lot of loss of productivity and all of that. So sometimes when the rules are in place, when we try to go around the rules, okay, we end up hurting other people. So it's that consciousness. That is where we often feel, because most people, you have to tell them what's in it for them, right?
Mm,
Why do you need to keep the workplace safe? Why do you not have to put this here? Why do you have to switch off when you are going out of the room? But if they don't understand the why, it's often difficult for people to comply. Okay,
okay.
if you just put the structures and you didn't do any sensitization, didn't do any training, you expect people to comply. Um, it's tough. It won't
Right.
happen.
Mm.
I,
It's
I think human beings are naturally rebellious. Okay,
right.
and it's not by willful rebellion,
Doing
right?
right
It's because we are creative, so we will find creative ways to get around things.
things. That's true.
You
That's
understand?
true.
We want to do it faster, so we'll find creative ways. So till you keep coming back and say no, stick to the procedure. Okay, we will
Mm.
jump steps. We will do stuff that
Find a
we are
way to do
probably
it. Yeah.
because we just want the end results. You
Mm.
understand?
Mm. And that's why you need to keep repeating it from time to time. But
Yes.
of course,
That's why you have to keep retraining. You have to
right.
keep doing, like, for instance, if it's fire, you have to at least once a year or so do fire training again. If it's your Red Cross people have to be trained, your first aiders, all of that. Yes.
Mm. So we're going to talk a bit more about that very soon. The training and employee engagement properly. We'll get into that. But of course, rules on paper don't always translate to real behavior. How can
Yes.
organizations ensure that safety rules are actually followed?
Okay, so most organizations apply two approaches, the carrot approach and the stick approach, right? So
Mm.
the carrot approach is, let's say if this team works for X number of hours without any accidents, etc., you get this reward. Okay, the stick approach is, if you get X number of accidents, you'll be penalized. The whole team across board will be penalized.
Mm.
Okay, so it makes, usually the carrot works better. Okay, so because everybody knows that if we adhere to it, we get this reward. Sometimes the reward is not cash.
Mm.
Okay, the reward is the team of the safety team of the month. A recognition,
Correct. Yeah.
safety star. Those. Yes, and it helps keep people cognizant of, oh, we have to do this. Oh, we have to keep each other safe. Okay, the neighbor rule. Remember, we have to watch out for our neighbor.
Mm.
So
Mm.
if you keep emphasizing, it usually helps.
Mm. Right. But so what are some of the creative ways we can make safety a daily priority in the workplace?
Hmm. All right. So practical ways, I would say, apart from the safety stickers on the wall, which people might read or not read, right, is to have marshals, right? So health and safety marshals, fire marshals, etc. So they sit in the teams and they often lead discussions on safety, on
Mm.
security. They remind people. So if, let's say, you sat in your chair and you kept sliding across the room, they are the ones who will remind you that be
Be
careful, your
careful.
heels could fall
Mm.
off, could wheel into someone else, etc.
Yeah.
If you are prone to opening the door and leaving it open, they are the ones who will typically remind you that you might have insects or bugs or whatever crawling in and all of that, right?
Mm.
So sometimes it's useful to have, some people call them opinion leaders, some people call them marshals, but they are team members who have been trained specifically and they know that their job is sensitization and constant looking out and prompting people. Okay.
Mm.
So that it's an active, it becomes part of everybody. Okay. The consciousness, everybody in the building is aware and is careful of this.
Mm. Right, very very important. I mean, I work with one of the banks in Ghana, some time back, and they had a fire marshal, actually,
Mhm.
safety
Mhm.
marshal, yeah, who
Mhm.
would constantly come around and come and inform us. I mean, do this, don't do that, and all of that. So
Mhm.
I think that
Yes.
companies should consider that. Now let's
Mm.
focus on training, and maybe we will try and see if we can wrap up on that. But if not, then we have some few other conversations. But let's talk about
Okay.
training. Now, training is often treated as a one-off event. I know you talked about how it should be done regularly. How important is that? Continuous training, how important is that?
Continuous training is the bedrock of, if you want any policy to be embedded and you want it to work,
Mm.
you continuous training is the only way. Remember, I told you human beings have a short memory. It's because we have different types of memory. We have long-term memory. Long-term memory, we keep things that are precious to us. Short-term memory, we keep fleeting things. There are some people that when you even train them in the factory, they don't translate it to their homes. Okay, but it's supposed to be a transition, it's supposed to be a lifestyle.
Mm.
Okay. So that is why the training has to be consistent.
Mm.
Is that I said quarterly, you can have mini workshops, you can have virtual demos, there are different ways in which you can um, reinforce the knowledge. Okay, because once you share the knowledge, then what is left is the reinforcement. But if you don't share it at all, that is where you have your biggest issue. So, for instance, let's say you open a big supermarket that is on 3 floors, right?
Mm.
And you train your workers on how to get things across. Okay, you will find that you start having a lot of people falling off staircases or getting on lifts and jamming your lifts and all of that, right? So typically, big businesses spend a lot of money on training. It's the smaller entities that think it doesn't matter, and they leave it to chance, and it creates a big problem.
Mm. All
Yes.
right. Of course. One thing too is that every workplace
Mhm.
has this one particular person who
Mhm.
resists change no matter what.
Who what?
Who resists change.
That is the disruptor.
So how
The
do you
disruptor is everywhere.
yeah,
Yes.
how do you deal with employees like that who don't want to follow safety measures? How do you deal
Well,
with
so
them?
they are the ones that the stick catches. Remember that everybody else is following the carrots.
Mm.
So they are the ones that have to be whipped into shape often,
So how
right?
do you do that?
So for a lot of people, right, one of the things that stresses people in is losing, for instance, points of your um what do you call it?
Mm.
Uh, Appraisal, for instance. So some organizations actually, as part of the appraisal process, include things like health and safety, etc., to make sure that they know that you will be penalized if you are found to have compromised safety if you accident. Because remember that those appraisal points lead to your remuneration.
Mm.
Okay. So some organizations you actually lose points of that.
Of that, right? Okay,
Mm.
we'll try and wrap up now. Now I know workplaces are evolving with time, and of
Yes.
course the risks are also evolving. What emerging safety challenges should we prepare for in, say, the next few years?
Okay, so I mean, one of the biggest challenges workplaces have faced over time is more sedentary workers. Okay, with
Mm.
automation, right, where machines are practically, for instance, factory floors, a lot of them are fully automated or at least 75% automated. So the people who are monitoring, etc., are seated most of the time.
Mm.
Okay, so if you don't have the right kind of seating, a lot of people now are getting back issues, not because of lifting, but now because of sitting.
Mm.
Okay. Most we go into most of the hospitals, a lot of issues with, especially for those of us who are constantly typing, right? A
Yeah.
lot of people have issues with wrists, with limbs, okay, with diseases associated with sedentary work, right?
Mm.
For most organizations, a lot of training now is around stress management because remember, stress management, stress is actually part of your health and safety. If your workers are extremely stressed, your productivity dips.
True.
Okay, so stress, managing sedentary work,
Mm.
remembering to get up, let's say every hour, and just even if you walk to the door and come back
Mm.
or walk for a short distance and come back, standing up, stretching, all of those things is now training that consciously has to be done in businesses. Okay, in let's say in shops, for people how to lift, how to pack stuff, how to bring them down, all of that is also an issue. Okay, then in terms of safety, recognizing electrical issues. Okay, because sometimes people will be in a room and they'll say, "Oh, there's something smelling," and nobody can figure out what it is.
Yeah.
Okay, because an alarm hasn't gone off. So if your alarm is not working, the people will be in there, and before they know, there's a flaming fire.
Right.
Okay, so those are all considerations, making sure that one, the systems, the physical systems work, and then training people to recognize the signs.
But are there some protocols that businesses are following to help mitigate these risks you're talking about? So the sedentary stuff. I know. Of course, the onus really lies on the employee or whoever it is to stand up and take some walks and all of that. But are there some protocols that some businesses are putting in place to ensure that their staff are, following those things? Hello? All right, I think I lost Na Ameli there for sharing her such practical insights and reminding us that safety is not a cost. It's actually an investment in people, productivity, and peace of mind. Well, if there's one thing that I am taking away from this conversation, it's a simple fact that it's okay to depend on God for certain safety things, but you also have to be responsible. So whether at the workplace or wherever you find yourself, your safety matters to us here at